Okay, we're up to a pretty famous Gemara about Ketzad Meragnu Fnei Akala. The bottom line on Tes Zayin Amid Beis. Tan Rabbanon Ketzad Meragnu Fnei Akala. How do we dance in front of the Kala? Now, if you notice, if you take a look at Rashi, Ketzad Meragdim, Rashi says, Ma oimrim lefoneha. What do you say lefoneha in front of her? In other words, what we want to do is we want to mishabeach the kala in front of the chassan. But how mishabeach? We say it in words. It's mashma. They would dance as well, of course. That's what we're going to see in the Gemara. They dance, but meragdim, because the Gemara goes right into it. Doesn't speak about what dance steps you go. The Gemara goes right into what shvachim that you would say. So they would say the shvachim in front of the kala to the chassan, and these are the shvachim they said. So Tan Rabbanan Ketzad Meragdim Kala Beishama Yomrim. Very famous words. Kala k'moshehi. You don't go ahead and exaggerate. A kala like she is. Kala no v'chasuda. So let's go through the Gemara and then we'll go over the Mefarshim. Amalim beishana beisilel. Harishahoisa chigeres. If she's lame. Isuma, she's blind. Amr la kala no v'chasuda. We say in front of her kala no v'chasuda. But Torah Namra midvash sheketirchak. You're supposed to stay away from a lie. So Amalim beisilel. A guy makes a bad business deal. Not that he was cheated, he makes a bad deal menashuk. You go ahead and tell him that you could have bought, you spent your money on Betamax, you spent your money on A-Trax, like when you could have gone ahead and invested in something else. Obviously you don't do that to the person. You say, yeah, I think it's going to be a great deal. It says, I would go ahead and I'd appraise it. That lo'ilam, a person's mind should always be mu'reves. It should be like in line with what other people. So obviously this person who's marrying this girl thought she was fine. So therefore, don't go ahead and say anything that's not. So let's see Rashi and see Taisus here. Says Rashi, according to our beauty and a chashivus mikalson, so we praise her. Chasudam. By Esther, it says there's an opinion. The four most beautiful women in the history of the world, right, were Rochav, Abigail, Sarah, and Esther. Says the Gemara, Esther was green, so then put in Vashti. So if Esther was green, what did Achashverosh see? If Esther was green, what did Achashverosh see? So on that he said that Chut Shel Chesed, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu made her look like a certain way that she found chesed in the eyes of people. So that's the lashon we say. Kala no v'chasuda, says Tosfos. Kala k'moshehi v'yesh bo mum yishtaku. Now, kala k'moshehi doesn't mean, you are blind, you are lame. You don't say that. You just don't say anything, right? You don't say anything. Below yishabchua, but you don't praise her either. So you par inami, or else yishabchua b'domina. Something that she says, she has beautiful eyes, no. Why? If you're going to pick on one limb, and you'll say, oh, she has beautiful eyes, that's master, the rest of her is not. So therefore, you go ahead and do with the chachamim to avoid it, we're attacking a loshin for every single kala. Every single kala, you said, kala no v'chasuda, no matter who it was, that's what you said. Because with this chassan, obviously, is Mures ben Abrias, this is what he saw. So they were attacking the lashon kala no v'chasuda. These are the words that they would say when they were literally dancing in front of the kala, as we're noig. Here's the Gemara. Kiyasar Avdimi Amar Hachi Mishara Kame Kalasa. That's right. B'marava in Eretz Yisrael, this is the way they would go ahead and be mishabeach in front of the kala. In Eretz Yisrael, this is the way they would be mishabeach in front of the kala. Loi kechol, she didn't need makeup around her eyes. Loi srak, she didn't need face makeup. Loi pirkus, she didn't need to braid her hair or rouge. Machloikis Rashi in two places. V'yales chein, that's what they would say. This lashon. Now, once we're describing the shyness that they would say, the Gemara says ki samchu rabbanon. When they would go ahead and give a smicha, when they would go ahead and give smicha to Rabbanon, the Reb Zera, right? When they gave smicha to Reb Zera, Sharle Hachi, this is they sang about him. Loi Kichol, Veloy Sirak, Veloy Pirkis, Vialis Chain. Same thing. Ki Samchu Rabbanu Ravami, Ravasi, when they were saying about Ravami and Ravasi, Sharle Hachi, they said the following: Kol min hadain, the Chol min dain smuchel nan. Anyone who's like these and anyone like these, samchul lanu, you should give smicha to for us. However, like samchul lanu, don't give smicha for us. People loimin sarmisin, loimin sarmitin. People, Rashi says sarmisin are people who go ahead and they say the lehepach of the Torah. Loimin sarmitin, people who are like a shmata, not like a shmata, right? That people, I don't know, shmata. How Rashi explains it is that. Samit and Lushin Tutin. He just says they're rags. He just says they're like rags. They don't explain things well, I guess. Just as a rag doesn't cover a person, they don't explain things well. Okay. The Gemara says Vaita. And what are some of the other things? But Amrullah others say Loimin Chamisin, Loimin Tumisin. They shouldn't be like Chamisin. Rashi says is Oimrim Chamishis Atam, only a fifth of the tam, and or they shouldn't be like termisin. Rashi says he doesn't know what that means. Other people say it's like bitterness. They shouldn't be bitter like lupines. Rabbi Vo is known for his beauty. The Gemara says how beautiful Rabbi Vo was. Rabbi Vo kihavi also sifta lebe Kesar. Rabbi Vo, when he would come from yeshiva to the house of the Caesar, he was involved with politics and going in front of the people. He's a very prestigious, handsome man, and he would go for them. Now, when he would come, Nafik Amasa de Bekesar, the slaves, the Amasa of the Bekesar of the Caesar's house, would come out. La'apei umashvulei hachin. Here's the song they would sing: Rabba da'amei, mamish the Rabba of his people, with Abrona di Masei, the leader of his nation. Hotzina de Nuhura, he lights up the place like a candle. Baruch Maschil the Shalom, may you come and be benched in peace. So this again, different Lashonis they would say in front of these exalted people. Amrullah Rabbi Yehuda, now discussing again what they did in front of a Kala. Amrullah Rabbi Yehuda Bariloi, Shahayin Bad Shaladas, he would take a branch of a Hadassim, and he would dance. Again, the Lashon Kala Chasuda, which is again. And the Hadasim, of course, is Esther is Hadas. So therefore, you have it makes very beautiful sense based upon the Rashi saw previously. Kalin of the Chasuda that Hakadosh Baruch was Moshe Chut Shel Chesed in front of Esther, and Hadasim Zu Esther. So therefore, Esther, who would be the perfect example of either way. Maybe you could say either she was beautiful or she wasn't, and even she wasn't Chut Shel Chesed, so it covers and encompasses any type of kala. Perhaps we could go ahead and suggest such a pshat, because that's what just entered my mind at the moment. I'm saying it's, but it does encompass both things. Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak Meraked Atlas. Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak, he would go ahead and he would juggle three. Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak, he seemed to have an ability to juggle. He would juggle three adasim. So Reb Zera said, you're embarrassing us. In other words, it's for you and your status to go ahead and dance in front of a kala the way you're dancing, right? It's embarrassing for us. A pillar of fire came down. I saw a pshat that came down, and it looked like a dasim. It was like a fire of a dasim. Only the greatest person in his generation, or one or two people, would it happen. In other words, it showed that what he did was correct. Again, it brings to mind the incident with David and Bathsheba, David and Michal. When David was dancing the Charka B'chalois, he took off the big name Melucha, and he was dancing in front of the Orin as it was coming down, and Michal gave him a zog. And he said, when it comes to cover Shemayim, I don't care. And over here as well, when it comes to Kima Mitzvahs and dancing in front of a Kala, I was often, one of the great Rosh Yeshivas of our generation is Rabbi Aaron Moshe Shechta of Yeshiva Chaim Berlin. And he's noticed the mitzvah that he is noted for was dancing mat in front of a Kala. And he learned the Gemara like this. I was once standing next to him. He said, Ketzad Meraknim. He learned the Ketzad, like a kasha, Ketzad, like then. He look around, Ketzad, how do you do it? And then he instantaneously jumped to a big dance. This is how you do it. This is the pshat, the Chaim Berlin Rosh Yeshiva. Ketzad, how do you do it? Like this, and then boom, he would go into a dance beautifully. in front of the Kala. Reb Zera says, Reb Zera, Ahanyole Shutisa Lisaba, when he saw that Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, what happened to him, that his fire went ahead and stood between them, it said it helped him. He was speaking, why was he zeicha to this? It said it helped him his shutisa, that the fact that shutise, that he was, because of the shutisa is a lashon of hadassim. A shutisa is in Aramaic for hadassim. Of vimila shetuse, his shtus, that he was willing to go ahead and make a fool of himself by dancing. Vimila shitase, other people said it was shitase, his learning that helped him. In other words, different play on words, either shutise, which is a hadassim, or shutuse, his shtus, the way he danced. Vimila shitase is learning. Rav Acha markiv lo akatve umrakid. Rav Acha, he put the kala on his shoulders and dance. Amle Rabbanon anomet mahul lemevarhachi. Should we do this? Amlahu, he said, idamya alaychu kekushu lechaya. If they resemble, if they're like a beam, then you could do it. So obviously we don't do this. We don't do this. I don't have a sefer. I usually have a sefer Toras Chaim. I have it at home. I'm not at home, but the art school brings the Toras Chaim. He said that dancing with a kala like this is wrong. He says even with a handkerchief is wrong. The Toras Chaim is an early Achron, so he's totally against the idea of the mitzvah tans, However, they bring over here in Hasidic communities, it's reared its head, and in recent years, it's kind of like a dava pasha to have a mitzvah tans. Be aware there are people. Rav Heinemann, for example, holds it's asa. It's certainly, if anyone, maybe a grandfather to dance with a kala, but anyone else, it would be questionable at best. Okay, I never funny about weddings. I always did whatever. Somebody once said, Yaakov Kamnetsky, what's your minig? Because whatever the mechutin wants is my minig. That's his way of making shalom. Whatever the mechutin wants is minig. And any wedding that we had, there was two things I was marked on. One, I was walking down my son or my daughter. I wasn't going to have switch the girls, the boys. And secondly, I was marked not on a mitzvah dance. Those are the two things that I just felt they were. One was a personal thing, and one I felt was against halacha. And weiter. Amr of Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amr of Yain's son. Mutal istakel b'fnei kala kol shiva. During shaver brachas, you're permitted to look at the kala in order to go ahead and make a husband endear to a husband. And the halacha is the fact is not like this. One should not look at the kala. Let's say you have a kala and a mace coming together. To cover the kala, the mace would go in a different direction. And if they're all coming together, you have a melech, a kala, and a mace, we're going to take the kala and the mace in front to cover the melech. So Allah Valakripis Hamelech, they said about Valakripis, Sha'avim with kala, when he met a kala, he turned away. In other words, he let the kala go first. The Chachamim, U'Mishabeach HaKripis. Shaz Gemara Shabchuhu, Echal the Shapa, but you think he did the right thing? Vam Ravashi, I feel Lamad Omar, Nasi Shamoichal Kvoid the Moichal, and Nasi was Moichal is Kavid. Melech Shemechal Kvoid the Yank Kvoid the Moichal. So how could Agrippas go ahead and be Moichal? Dam Amar, Slaim Tasam Lechamelech, Slaim Tis Tasam Lech, it's a Lashon Slaim Tasim, Shetei Imasa Lecha. The aim of the king should be upon you all the time. So one is not permitted to go ahead and one is not permitted to go ahead and give over the king should be Moichal is covered to let the kala go first. So Pashas Derachim Habe says the Gemara. The Gemara is a Pashas Derachim. Pashas Derachim, meaning they came together, so it wasn't recognizable clearly that he strayed because of the kala. It looked like he was just taking another road. Tarabanan. Mevalan Talmud Torah loitzasa meis. Again, the Torah, you carry out the Mevatel Torah loitzasa meis. Ulachnas kala, and even from achnas kala. Amru olav al Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Loi, Shahayim Mevatel Talmud Torah loitzasa meis. Ulachnas kala. He would do that. The Medam Amurim. When was this? Is Kishain Imay Kol Tzarcha. That when there's not enough people to take care of it. Obligation Imay Kol Tzarcha. If enough people take care of it, Ein Mevatel. We spoke this out in Megillah. The Kama Kol Tzarcha. What's Kol Tzarcha? Yom Shmuel Bar Ini Mishmei Derav. Tresa Alfei Gavre. 12,000 people. Bishisa Alfei Shipure. And 6,000 people with Shayfa. So according to this pshat, 18,000 people. If 18,000 people are there, then you don't have to come. If not 18,000 people, then you do. Bring me the others say, Klesa Alfe Gavre, Uminayu Shisa Alfe Shipure. some say 13, they have a different guess at 12, and the 6,000 who brought the shofar are among the 12, not separate. Ula Amar, going the Chaitze Gavri Me Abula Bat Sichra, you have a people that from the gate of the town to the cemetery. Sheshvitim Rav Yochanan Amar, the Tilasuk and the Sinasa, giving it is the same way taking it away. Manas Sinasa, B'Shisha Riboy, just like giving it with 600,000 people. After Tilasai, B'Shisha Riboy with 600,000 people. 600,000 people. The Hani Mili, the Kari B'Tani, this is the person who learned Chumash and learned Mishnayos on the base. Avalaman, the Masni law, Leslie Shitz teaches it. There's no end to how many people have to be there. Yidua that there was a funeral home on East Broadway where Moshe would avoid going there because again, al Spittle Torah, we'd have to avoid going there. I spoke out. I'll just say quick myso. I spoke this out in the Sefta Megillah. There was a woman who was married to a kohen, and unfortunately, Loyalenu, she was a nusa. She was raped, and they didn't know what to do, whether she should get divorced or not. It was big shaila. They came to Moshe with the shaila. So the guy comes to the shaila. It says Moshe says in a second, "There's Zogda, there's a kohen. Who says he's a kohen?" That. So the guy figures by Rav Moshe. He said, "How many people have to be Levi not to come?" And Rav Moshe said, "Das is taka shvera shaila." This Gemara, das is taka. What you think is a hard shaila is the easiest shaila. This is a shvera shaila. Okay. We said, what are we speaking about? The Mishnah said that she's claiming she was claiming it's ksuba of 200. He's saying it's a ksuba of 100 because she wasn't a basula. If there's yesh edim beinuma and other beinuma, she went out beinuma, and then it's a raya. She was a basula. The Gemara wants to know my hinuma. What exactly is hinuma? So Surchiv bar Papa of Siyam fame, right? You don't get Surchiv bar Papa very often in the Gemara, but you get him every time when you finish Masechta. Surchiv bar Papa Mishmei Deziri Amar Tanura Da'asa. It's like a chuppah that was ugly like Adasa. A chuppah that was ugly like Adasa. Labias. Why are you unmuted when you sneeze? I don't understand that. You sneezed. You unsneezed the mute button. You dafka unmuted to sneeze. It makes no sense. I don't hear anybody, but I hear you sneezing.
I want to get a taste of the old days.
No, it's not the old days. It always happens.
We're in a rush.
Go back to sneezing quietly. Says the Gemara. So one says Tanura de Asa. Rabbi Yochanan says Krisa Namnein Bakalasa. It's a veil, the menamnein, that the kala sleeps behind. That's why it's called himnuma. Can you imagine that? It's a deck tichel, right? So you don't see her, so she's sleeping. Okay, I can imagine kala if she falls asleep at the wedding. That's nishkan good to simon. It's not a very good simon, but l'chayra, that's the lashon of himnuma. Rabbi Yochanan Broika said that if they give out like parched grain. They'd give out parched grain. That would be a raya that she was a basula because they did that. Says the Gemara, Tana, Yehuda Raya, right? You just gave me the rayas that take place in Yehuda. In Bavel Mai. In Bavel, what is the signs of a basula in Bavel? The Bavel Mai, what would they do at the wedding that would be a sign that the Edom could say she was a basula? Samarav, this is really strange, guys. They would rub oil on the heads of the Chachamim. As I state, Hanoshim, the woman would pour, I'm reading Rashi, would pour wine of oil on the heads of the Talmidim and they would rub it in. Okay, that's what it says, right?
Why did they need to give signs of what she is by the chasanas? Whose business is it other than the chasans?
Again, they would Basula's chasana was different than Almana's chasana. So we want to know different simanim they did. They did different simanim, and these simanim are the raya that she was a basula. Like it was Bizanazeh. Usually a kala wears a white dress, right? Usually a kala wears a white dress. And in the old days when she wasn't a kala, she wasn't an almana, she'd wear off-white. She'd wear a different color. So you'd have a sign though. It would be that. In other words, it's been passed down in history. Such simanim. So it has been passed down. Now, I didn't have a Shulchan Aruch, but there's a source. Ibn Ezra brings down this source. I know they do strange things to remember that she was a psula. I guess this pouring on the head is a strange thing. Anyway, Amar le Rav Papa Abaya says Rav Papa to Abaya, Mishcha de Chavusa Kamama. Did they pour like shampoo oil? So I'm like, no, Yasma. He called him Yasma. Didn't your mother rub oil in the heads of the Chachamim by your wedding? Ki had that Rabbanon like the Chachamim, this Asikla Lebrei Bei Rabba Barula. He had a shidduch done with a house of Rabba Barula. Imila Rabba Barula is Asikla Lebrei Bei Hu Rabbanon. Rabba Barula made a shidduch with some Chacham. And they did this. Okay. Amalasamai, why would they show that she's an almana? So Tana Rabbi Yosef, Amalasa less like simonit, they wouldn't go ahead and have this parched grain. They wouldn't have simanim. So she wasn't a basula. Okay. That ends the easy part of the Gemara. Because now we have everything has to come to an end, right? All good things have to come to an end. Okay, we come to the end of the Gemara. Now we had a migu. What was the migu? Moida Rebbe, let's go outside, guys. By the migu of Nasti, migu that I could have said Mukas Eisani, right? She's according to Rabbi Yeshua, she's not believed. He didn't believe that migu. Maybe it just entered her mind. Maybe she was doing a trick, because the shar is not shachar lefenecha. The shar is shachar lefenecha. There's a smoking gun. Conversely, right? You have our Mishnah where he said, if a guy says this field was your father's and he sold it to me, he's believed. There was no smoking gun. There never was a claim on this field. He's the one who introduced it. So now, that's where he's minded to. That was the Gemara. So again, however, if there are Adim that it was the father's field, then he's not believed. That was the concluding statement. Again, the concluding statement was, if there was, then yesh Adim shehi shel aviv v'hu oimer lekachtia himena einu neman. And the Adim that it belongs to the father, and he bought it, then he's not believed. Okay, that's what it says. Says the Gemara. Umayda Rabbi Yeshua kishoyim lechaveri. Now the Gemara wants to know, why did you chap the case to the father, guys? What the Gemara is going to do now is give a few other possibilities of the case. Why do we? In other words, you just want to prove a pesha aso pesha hita. Why do we go ahead and say the case of saying to a person, this was your father's field? There are other options. The Gemara is going to ask, what about those other options? But listening, Moida Rabbi Yeshua ba'omer lechaveroi sadazu shalcha. This field was yours, ulekachtia mimcha, and I bought it from you. Why did it say a father? Why didn't you just say the following? Guy comes along and says, this was your field, and I bought it from you. Why did you have to say it's his father's field? And for the Gemara, mishum the kaboy lemisnei seifa, im yesh edim shehi shaloi. If that's the case, guys, outside, the case in the Mishnah was, he said this field was your father's. Im yesh edim that it was your father's, you're not believed. So now, if the case was this field was yours, then you have to say im yesh edim that this field was yours, you're not believed. Again, the parallel has to be in yesh edim that it was your field. In the first case, yesh edim was the father's field. In the case you want to suggest now, if you're saying it was your field, it must be the case of the edim, and it was the edim that it was his field. Now, why not? Now let's go outside, guys. A guy buys a field from somebody. He has a star that he bought the field. How long does he have to watch the star for? 3 years. After 3 years, you don't have to watch. We say if a guy's on the field 3 years and the guy doesn't open his mouth, then it's his field. Good. So this guy is on the field now, and the chazaka, he has a chazaka that he's there. So now, here's the kasha. Why does the Mishnah say, Umoida, a guy says this was your father's field, Umoida, if you have Edom, it's your father's field, why don't you say to a guy, this was your field, and Edom Umoida, and this was your field, and I tried calling one, I feel bad. So we have the fact that a person's on a field is a right that he's there. So now we're going to prove that the last statement's not going to make any sense. Watch what happens there. Says the Gemara. What are you going to say over here? What will you say over here? The Taisus Rav Huna, Lenny. Taisus Rav Huna, parallel to that. You'd have to learn. Why wouldn't he believe if he tells the guy that it's his field. If the guy was there 3 years without any complaint, why is he not believed? I'm there 3 years. No one opened the mouth. The fact that I squatted on that field for 3 years, no one opened the mouth, is right, it's mine. And if he didn't ask for 3 years, of course he's not believed. So in other words, we learned the case of father because this taina won't apply. We'll see in a second why not. But if the guy comes along and says, the Gemara's kash is the following. Why don't we say a case? The guy shows up and says, this field was yours and I bought it from you. Says the Gemara, you know why you don't say that case? Because then you would say, and if they're aidim that it's his field, then he's not believed. Why isn't he believed? If he was there 3 years, why isn't he not believed? And if he was there 2 years, it's pshit, he's not believed. So there's no chiddush in that case. So therefore, you didn't learn the case. Therefore, I learned the case of hapesha asar, a case where you said this was your field. I learned in the case where it said this was your father's field. Fred, the Gemara has the question. Why don't we say the same thing? When in the case where if you were there 3 years, even when it was the father's field, you're okay. And if you weren't 3 years, it's not okay. Why by the father is not a problem? Says I'll tell you why. If he ate there for 3 years, he squatted there for 3 years. Why is he not believed? And if he didn't eat for 3 years, in other words, the same taina we'd have if it was his field that he claimed should have the same taina if it was his father's field. So the Gemara says no. Very good by his father. 2 years in the lifetime of his father. Then the father died. And 1 in the hands of the son, and the sons of cotton. So you have 3 consecutive years. But the svara of 3 years is the following. No person is going to allow a guy to squat on his field for 3 years without opening his mouth. But over here, since they're 2 separate people, and the second person is a cotton who's machaz, not a macha, therefore the 3 years doesn't show anything. And you'll be able to go ahead and make a macha even after 3 years. And therefore it works, says the Gemara. You can't be machzik in the nichse of a cotton even after you got bigger. What does that mean, guys? Let's say a person is a cotton. You have his field. You're there 3 years. He doesn't open his mouth. Even if you're on the field 3 years when he becomes a gadol, it doesn't make a difference because he loses sight of it. Since the first 3 years don't count because you can't make a macha, it doesn't make a difference later on either. Look at Rashi. Rashi says beautifully. The Omar, someone who takes hold of a cotton's field for 3 years, the fact that he's 3 years there without a complaint is not a chazaka. The haidlei amicha, the reason why the cotton didn't open his mouth, mishum the cotton who, and even if he grows up 3 years as a gadol afterwards, the hichzik zebefanav kamashanim ain't a chazaka, and if he's there, kamashanim won't be a chazaka. Since it began when he was a cotton, the cotton doesn't know. He doesn't know it was his father's field. In other words, the fact that this guy is on the field for 3 years doesn't make a difference because the cotton doesn't know to open his mouth. Because listen, his father was on the field, the guy was on the field, the father didn't open his mouth, he doesn't know anything. So even if when the father died and he grew up and the guy's being matched to the field, it's not a chazaka. He could open his mouth then because he can find out afterwards, 1 second, you know what? This guy's on your father's field. Therefore, that's the case of our Mishnah. Because there in the Mishnah, you wouldn't have a chazaka. Because if you do have a chazaka from Manusha, if you have a chazaka, why don't you believe? And if you don't have a chazaka, of course you're not believe, right? Either way. So that's what the Gemara says. Spread the Gemara kasha. So it comes out that Rav Huna is our Mishnah. That no, the case of the Mishnah is according to Rav Huna. Rav Huna is an Amayra. Spread the Gemara Rav Huna masnisan us lashminon. Rav Huna is telling us a Mishnah. Rav Huna the Yukad Masnisan. Rav Huna is telling the diak of the Mishnah, right? The diak in the Mishnah. It doesn't say openly in the Mishnah the case. The inference is why we learned this case is for this reason. The diak. You know why we learned the case of the father? Because that's the only case where you would have a chazaka. Because if it would be himself, the guy would say, you know what, this was your field, right? This was your field. And a pesha hita. No, because in a lot of cases, if there's Eidim, then he's not believed. Manushach, if he's there for 3 years, he should be believed. And if he's not there 3 years, of course he's not believed. So because of that, diuk, that by a father, you don't have that taina, that's the reason you learned it. Afilu higdil, even if he gets older, the chiddush is that he's there 3 years as a gadol, kamash malon that he still can open his mouth, because it began, as we saw in Rashi, began without the ability to be mafsik, to make a claim, and here he could. I will stop over here to take mommy home.